persons living with rare disease the same opportunities and rights, so they can live longer, better lives, reaching their full potential and well-being, and included in a society that leaves no one behind. Each stakeholder over the recent years has developed their competencies and knowledge specific to their field of activity, whether it is conducting research or therapeutic development, pooling expertise, offering access to much-needed specialist advice under the European reference networks. However, the problem, and indeed the much-needed solutions to address both the global public health needs of rare disease that are common to all member states, as well as addressing the individual needs of each and every person living with a rare disease, require us to find more effective ways to partners. Together to harness our collective expertise, energies and resources. So why now? Why now is the Together4RD initiative important and different? We needed this initiative, not now in fact, but yesterday. And because first and foremost, we need to focus on forging together a common space for industry and European Reference Network collaboration. Creating together a safe space, I insist on that, safe space to partner and build a sustainable system for all, for payers, for regulators, for HTA agencies, clinicians, researchers, companies and patients. Together for Rare Diseases is a good name that invites us to come together to define the rules of our partnership, providing the general principles, enabling an efficient and balanced collaboration, to build trust, align incentives for shared benefits, not just for the one, but for all, to provide the much-needed transparency and assurances needed to grow a healthy, fruitful, public-private partnership in rare diseases, as only together we can find a solution to break the radio silence and overcome an outdated approach regarding collaboration between European reference networks and industry. The European reference networks have established proof of concepts that pooling expertise, sharing data, generating new knowledge and valuable insights can be used not only to diagnose and discuss the care of complex cases, but also to spotlight best clinical practices and be used as quality benchmark to substantially improve the outcomes of care delivered at local level, which at the end is what counts to improve the outcomes. But the European Reference Network also have an important research mandate, which does require the networks to further develop and consolidate their research capacities. We need to support the networks to become truly clinical research-ready networks. And we've been saying that all along through Rare 2030 with all stakeholders. In this area, companies have valuable assets, skills and experience. They contribute beyond financial investment. The rare disease patient community, I say it high and clear, is supportive of the European reference networks and industry partnering, as it can significantly support the advancement of knowledge and meet the unmet needs of the rare disease community. There is an unsaid fear in the minds of many with two key questions. If we couple up the European Reference Network and industry and support an acceleration in research, will this lead to a tsunami of high-cost therapies? Next question is, will this cause a threat to sustainability of the public healthcare system? My answer is no. No, because making research more efficient, making better use of the money that we are spending in clinical development, making sure that infrastructures are primed for the development of therapies that address real unmet medical needs doesn't necessarily lead to high-end expensive treatment. We said it already in our 2018 paper, Breaking the Deadlock to Leave No One Behind, and this was further refined in the Rare 2030 Foresight study supported by the European Commission and initiated in this Parliament by MEP Frédéric Ries with us today. Thank you for that. Progress to address high unmet needs and save lives should always be encouraged and supported. There is a curve in the uptake of innovation. We tend to forget that. We tend to forget that rare disease is like any other medicine area, and there is a curve in knowledge and experience. We need to put all of this more in the perspective of the history of medicines as a new frontier, which after benefit to society at large. It's not so different than the previous revolution in medicines. Having a new blueprint for clinical research that involves the entire EU ecosystem would, in our view, lead to more optimized treatments, better tailored treatments, better use of public and private money, extensive use of research integrated in an ecosystems that collect, generate, and use data in an efficient manner. So today, you already welcome the key policy asks being presented by the Together for Rare Diseases initiative and call to establish the foundation for European reference network industry collaboration under flagship pilots. Pilots that can develop the capacities and the experience that healthy public-private partnership indeed is both possible and essential. And I always like to refer to the experience since 40 years of the EORTC, which worked very well in private-public partnership in the field of cancer. So we are not reinventing the wheel. The outcomes and insight of the pilots can equip our toolbox to deliver the EU research strategy for rare diseases as an additional mechanism to help achieve our objective in this area alongside, and I would like to insist on that, alongside the public-public partnership and other public-private partnership. The rare disease partnership, which Horizon Europe which the Commission and Member States are shaping now, is essential. They are the foundations, and this is a public common good. And when we have also the future innovative health initiatives in the next calls, which we hope, that's great, and the future RD moonshot from industry with the patients' organization and all stakeholders, that also goes in the right direction. Everything in rare disease is innovative. Everything, as the complexity of rare disease has forced us to all be innovators, game changers, and pioneers often. Let me state the obvious. As with all innovation in clinical practice, in research or treatment, no one person, organization, or sector alone can make innovation happen. From concept to development to implementation and scaling up, it's only through collaboration that we can unlock the true potential. So let us today walk the walk as innovators, as game changers, as pioneers, and use the Together for Rare Disease key policy ask as a springboard to go from good to great and to go from promises and words to facts and actions. So yes, I stand here today as a father, as a patient representative on behalf of my community, but to stand here today to hold all stakeholders present, accountable, for delivering on the promise that science, technology, and innovation hold for community. I stand here to insist that we can take these initial steps to go for a system where expertise, resources, and energies are wasted to defend small areas of powers today, to a system that thrives in sharing data and knowledge and is able to build healthy partnership. We welcome the policy recommendation. They will serve as a reference point to reset a system that delivers for public good and for the good of people living with rare disease and for all at large. Of course, it's a first step. We must all agree first on the principle of this collaboration to happen. I believe that learning from the past and also working now on new approaches, pilots, will help us to move out from some of the old approaches and outdated attitudes. We need to overcome this, and we really want to see the change. And this goes all of us here in the room, for all of us in the room. It is time to set out this relationship under Together for Rare Disease and under the banner of common good and find a way to build a healthy collaboration to communicate and behave as real partners. At the heart of this ERN industry collaboration, there are data and registries. And the purpose of registries, which can be for planning healthcare, planning social care, for research purpose, or for healthcare purpose, either collective to develop guidelines or individual to come to the best decision for the patient, they have the different purposes. But on the purpose of ERN registries, let me be clear. Most of the ERN registries were set up with the primary purpose to support epidemiological surveillance and diagnosis, and a few to support research. But if we really want them to be sustainable data infrastructure for rare disease, we need to discuss how these registries can be used for different purposes. Planning, healthcare, or research purposes, including social care, quality improvement in healthcare, regulatory purposes essential to make them robust, and health technology assessment. I'm aware that all this leads to complex discussion on data access, on data quality and management, and who will contribute to fund all of this, under what conditions. This is precisely what we need to clarify through the pilots and to learn from it, but it is the right moment to do it as we're shaping the European health data space. And the type of activities that should be supported and by which actor, European Commission, Member States, can industry support, collaborate on, how can we align the interests of patients, etc. How can we ensure that they do not come into silos and well integrated into a RD health ecosystem? That's really the core question. So the pilots that are to be launched are a good opportunity for all different stakeholders group, including the Board of Member States, to follow this and help us to work together. What activities are meaningful and ethically sound? Identify the learning tools and resources, pick them out, and then scale up in a safe and mutually beneficial way. It's a win-win-win-win situation. So let's deliver on a promise to EU citizens living with rare disease that their lives matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan, for such a powerful message about why the collaboration is needed. And as you say, needed yesterday. The opportunity is there, the stars are aligned, the organisations have all understood the value of sharing it. As you say, we're moving through the pilots as an opportunity to actually make it happen, to work out some of these kinks and be absolutely practical. Let me now pass to the last member of our opening panel, and that is from the Czech Republic representing the EU Presidency, Jakub Dvoreček, the Deputy Health Minister. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's an amazing opportunity to be here. And yeah, I mean, we are coming to the second part of Czech Presidency. We are close to end. So as it was 13 years ago, again, we try to support it as much as possible, the development in the area of rare disease. I plan to have a, let's say, quite organized speech, but let's make it, let's say, more philosophical, because a number of things were already mentioned here. So what we have now is quite a nice ecosystem. We have a number of specialized centers around Europe. We can see that the EMA is approving a number of amazing therapies every year. The last year it was one of the best years in the history of EMA of the new active substances, the new molecules. The same it is with FDA. You can see that they are really approving a number of very promising treatments which comes to the patient. So we have probably quite a good environment, good ecosystem to have to motivate the research, to support the R&D in this field. Of course, it's not perfect, but it's giving us a number of deliveries during the time. It's definitely something what we can appreciate, and it's obvious that the industry and also the academy is doing an amazing job. Where we can see, you know, the problem and an issue which is not still solved is the time which comes, you know, after this amazing success when the EMA or FDA approves the new technology. It looks like that it's the end of struggle of the patient, but usually it's a start of the struggle, because then you have to come, you know, through that all painful process, you know, to get inside to the reimbursement system of member states. Every system is a little bit different. I know how complicated it is. And at that time, it's coming out that the information, the data we're receiving from clinical trials, this early data, which comes, you know, from the last part of research, are usually not the one which is requested, you know, by the payer funds, by the insurers. It's very difficult to ensure, you know, that the treatment, the promises which comes, you know, from that, it's really materialized in the support for the people. It's so difficult and complicated for the regulators to get set up the price and reimbursement. So it's really complicated. This is something, you know, what needs to change. And we have now, let's say, the 1 year of experience with the new pathway which we set up for the rare disease molecules to come to the Czech system. We involved the patient organizations and medical scientific societies in the evaluation process. So we are requesting the soft data, we are requesting the social data, the data from the quality of life, a number of other informations to support the promising technology to get inside the system. Then it's reviewed by the regulatory agency, and then in the end, we also invite these two stakeholders, the scientific societies and patient groups, to be the part of the decision-making process. And I have to really highlight it, that the current situation with the informations we have it, to really say, yes, this is something worth to the huge investment we do, is sometimes very complicated. And this is something what we probably need to change. We need to really think, how we setting up the clinical trials. We need to get the patients to be the part of the setup, of the design of the clinical trials, to really ensure that this impact on quality of life, the way of the family, how the family is living, with that new treatment, and what is the added value, to all the people around that patient who needs the treatment, etc., to see how it is impacting the social system, the employment, etc. Without those kind of data, so we will have a big struggle to ensure, that this sometimes very costly therapies, the treatments comes to the life, and they will help the people. So it's not just about the reimbursement itself, it's really about the new setup, new design of clinical trials, which will reflect much more the needs of payers, the needs of regulatory agencies and decision-making bodies, in member states. So this is the one point which I would like to highlight it. And the second point, which comes close to what I already mentioned, is the moment when we do this evaluation and we start to really seek the funding. And again, it's something what is quite complicated, not just for the Czech Republic. I believe for a number of member states. For somebody it's more complicated, for somebody less. But we struggle all. And sometimes it's very difficult for us, for the people who are sitting, at the political level, at the ministries, that we are investing a huge money to a small group of people. Maybe it doesn't sound nice, but with the very limited budget, which is dedicated to all healthcare. And we have to justify that we did a good investment, the investment which helps the people. And I'm really using the word investment, because it's not a cost. I believe it's a real investment to health of the people. But we need to get the justification for our budget, for the rest of the patients who also need the treatment, and they are not from the area of rare disease, that this money are invested well and really helping. And we have to create it, let's say the better system where we share the risks with the producers, with marketing authorization holders. We definitely need to get more time to ensure, that the results, which I said are coming from clinical trials, are really come in the real life. And without that, it will be very complicated. So to build and create the flow of data, and to have to ensure, that also the marketing authorization holders are ready to really have novel payment models implemented. That's something, what we doesn't need a new legislation. It's everything is already existing. It's just about the motivations which we need to put, on this negotiation and discussion. So this is something what I miss, and what we would like to have it in the future more and more implemented. And the last point, which I'm used to highlight it, on the events around the rare disease. And it's really the big priority for the Czech presidency, and it will stay as a priority also the after Czech presidency for the Czech Republic, is the discussion about the availability of the treatment based on the willingness of marketing authorization holder to launch the project in the product in some of the member states. And I fully understand that there is limitations in capacities. It's not easy to prepare the file, but now the situation, as you can see, are not really something what we can appreciate it. In some states, the difference between the registration and the final availability of the full file and launch could be 5, even more years. And this is something that is not acceptable. And I know that there is a lot of limits. Those limits are coming, from the capacity of the producers and marketing authorization holders, etc., etc. But at the end, we need to create some bridge. something, some system, some steps, which will happen at the moment of the registration and the final availability. But of course, it's on the member states to decide to reimburse or not to reimburse. But we need to get the chance to review it, the technology, and to say, yes, we are going to reimburse. And now the EMA can collect the information about how the launch of the product will look like in member states. It's already in the legislation, so it's possible to collect this data, to make the data available. And then there is one point missing. And it's what we shall do at that moment. We see, or we have the information that, for example, Czech Republic or Bulgaria or, I don't know, any other country will have to wait another 4 years. So create a tool which will help us to keep the communication with marketing authorization holder, to have some setup of price which we can implement it, and maybe to reimburse individually, this treatment before the file for the Czech Republic is prepared or for another country. So it's not acceptable from our point of view, and we will do the maximum to move this topic forward. And that's, I'm using probably more time than was dedicated to me. I feel that, yeah. So thanks a lot. It was a great pleasure to have a chance to talk here. And as I said, even after the presidency, we will do the maximum.
Thank you very much, Jakub, and it's really inspiring to hear that the passion for rare diseases in the Czech Republic isn't just temporary as a hat you pass through the presidency, but this is something, and you've also identified the clear area where you see progress needs to be made. So thank you very much. Thank you to all our opening speakers, to Stelios, to Jan and to Jakub. I'm going to invite you to step down because I will then invite my next panel to come and join me. So thank you for our opening session. So I'm going to invite to come up and join me Andrei Ries, the Principal Scientific Advisor for DG Santé of the European Commission, Professor Alexis Azimanagoulou, the ERN EpiCare Coordinator and the Coordinator of the ERN Coordinators Group, and a member, of course, of the Steering Group of Together for Rare Diseases. I have Dimitrios Athanasiou, a board member of the World Duchenne Organization and a member of the Pediatric Committee of the European Medicines Agency. I have Victoria Headley, the Rare Disease Policy Manager for Newcastle University and an advisor to Together for Rare Diseases, and Vittoria Carrara, Director for Government Affairs for the European Confederation of Pharmaceutical Entrepreneurs, that's UCOPE, and also a member of the Steering Committee for Together for Rare Diseases. So here you see, joining me, we have exactly what we're calling for, which is collaboration between the ERNs and industry. So we are, as we were challenged by Jan at the beginning, we are walking the talk in order to deliver on this. So welcome to the members of the panel. And I've got the same question to all of you, just to start, to say what's so valuable about ERN industry collaboration? What's the role of it, particularly in this area of rare diseases, and what's stopping it happening? Because it seems like it should be so obvious. So from your perspective, what stops it happening? Andrei, let me start with you.
It's first, I don't think it's a big stop, because of course this cooperation is also happening in the field of rare diseases between industry and clinicians. What is the challenge we are facing since beginning of this setup, that because I was co-chairing a number of meetings with member states, with the board of member states, when we made the final statement, which was not easy to achieve. Because of course, you, as usual, you have different views. Somehow, we found this middle ground to get into agreement. Because this was also the goal of myself and my colleague co-chair to get into agreement. So this created at least the first. This is, I think we should put this also in very clearly. This was the first formal statement and the way of allowing this cooperation, but the number of conditions which I think that they were put in place, and I will refer also to the end of this statement, when also was a call for the pilots, because this is not the first time we are discussing that it would be good to show the case and really learn from experience. But then, COVID came. The other priorities started to be more urgent for year ends, also for the whole systems. And now I think it's a good moment to come back to this. This was my last meeting a few weeks ago when we came back to the member states that we would like to come back to this discussion. So in this moment, this is if we speak about the kind of formal place when we have to agree that this is basically, I'm referring a bit to Jan's point that this, you call this safe, healthy framework. I think this is a good place, but again, it will not happen without the input from the all parties. I mean, I don't believe, myself, it is speaking a bit more from my personal experience, that you can get into agreement without taking into account, 27 member states, year ends as leaders of this exercise, but of course individual member states' voice and patients' voice and so on. And also we should not also forget about the hospital managers, because often they also are calling to be part of the story, because often they also party in this band.
Thank you. Professor Alexis, let me turn to you. Jan raised something that I thought was really interesting, because he said that perhaps one of the things that is holding people back is fear. And this underlying fear is that if we open up this kind of collaboration, that there would be a tsunami of really expensive new products coming, and that this would somehow destroy the financial sustainability of our health systems. So when we ask the question, what's stopping industry ERN closer collaboration, do you feel it's that fear that it might open the door to things that they can't manage?
Well, it can be part of it. I don't know if it's fear, or at the end it could be even misunderstanding. Because what we often forget, and I agree with what Andrea said a minute ago, I mean, what are the ERNs? Medical teams. How did we discover all the drugs available today? By collaboration between medical teams and the industry. This is as old as everything. It already happens. The difference is that today we did not yet invent or find the link, I don't know if it's legal or if it's more than that, where a huge infrastructure created by the European Commission, linking together more than 20,000 doctors across Europe and specialists in rare diseases. How can this system collaborate as such with the industry? But the medical teams or the individual doctors already collaborate with the industry. Otherwise, we would have no drugs for ages now. So I think that there is yes, fear and misunderstanding play a role, because we often forget that this collaboration already exists, and we just need to take advantage of the fact that today the different networks link people together, link colleagues, hospitals, countries together, and try to find a way that this becomes more evident to everybody. I mean, who advises the industry on the unmet needs? The doctors that see the patients with rare diseases. Who advises the doctors? The patients that are seen in our outpatient clinics and tell us, this is what I need, this is what happens at night, this is what happens in the morning, this is what I need as a treatment. So all the actors are there. I mean, we don't need to invent them, they are already in place. But we need to link them in a more appropriate way. I mean, we use the term transparent, but again, honestly, in Europe at least, it's quite transparent what everything that the industry is doing with the medical teams, the university, hospitals, the Commission, is already transparent. There are even more than needed rules for this. So
I think that's a common message that people sometimes say about Europe, is we have too many rules. So let's try and explore a little bit more about how we make this ERN industry collaboration unlock the potential and still be a safe space. Demetrios, what's your view?
Thank you. I really hear about this fear of having 2,000 treatments for rare diseases because we work together. I wish that was realistic. So unfortunately, if we work together, we will not have these treatments. And I can tell you, let's say, from my regulatory hat that, yeah, it's much more complicated. So I don't even see this fear realistic. to be very honest. With the 20 years of regulation, a successful regulation, and all the efforts we do, we have how many orphan drug designations, but how many drugs are accessing actually the patients? Very, very few. With the same pace, we'll need how many years? A couple of millenniums? So maybe before that time, we can work together to have some more development. And a second point on this is that, if we don't have the development in Europe, the development will happen. So if we don't want to play together in Europe, somebody else will play somewhere else. So we are not in a silo. So how we can work together? I think that there is amazing work done. We have built a network, a very strong network with expertise. But from our perspective, from a person perspective, what we need a little more is to widen the network, because obviously our 30 million people are not registered in the ERNs. I guarantee you this. But also we need to deepen it, as Alex said. We need to deepen and to create more expertise, to work with stakeholders in an organized way. Because I've heard prior that the ecosystem is there. The ecosystem is not there. I'm sorry, we're losing 20%, I think, of our clinical trials the last years in Europe. I don't see a very, at least, evolutionary successful ecosystem. So most probably, we need to build the ecosystem with the elements we have. We need to build them better. We need to sharpen the tools that we have. And obviously, transparency is a key. I would say person integration, the governance even more. I hear the data sharing. I think everybody loves data sharing in the patient advocacy groups. I hope everybody else likes it too. And data ownership, I think it's pretty clear in the legislation who is the data, just to put up there. See. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Demetrios. And again, you've helped us sort of reveal that this is a phantom fear, that there's going to be lots of new treatment. Actually, the big challenge is when the innovation is there, is getting them into the hands of the clinicians and the patients who most need them. And this was highlighted by Jakub himself, who said that in the Czech Republic, it's sometimes 4 or 5 years in the gap between something being approved centrally but then actually being used. So this is an area clearly where there's room for it. And again, thank you for highlighting that we have 30 million patients in Europe who could potentially be benefiting, but we don't have 30 million people enrolled in ERNs. So still a lot of potential to roll out and expand their benefits. Let me now invite Victoria Headley to come in and share from the perspective of somebody who's working as a researcher and clinician in the area of rare disease. What's your view?
Thanks, Tamsin. I think, at the end of 2018, we had the last in-person conference for the ERNs here in Brussels, and actually Andre was so supportive of this. Lucas Sangiorgi and I chaired a session on ERNs and research, and the ERNs were actually quite new back then. And the key messages even then was that, if ERNs are going to really, make a change in research and do more than just kind of mapping research potential and what skills there are, you have to have this collaboration. And in terms of the barriers, I think there's actually quite a few reasons why this collaboration hasn't happened to date. Sometimes simply the fact that the ERNs have such a long list of responsibilities, that's where their strength lies, because they are the first structures that are spanning the healthcare and the research domain. So it's really exciting, but I'm sure we'll come to this later. There are lots of challenges in expecting these what were very brand new networks and groups of people to do all these things. So there is the issue of time, but I do agree with the comments that, we really do need to work with the member states and to show actually the concrete examples of the kinds of things that have been happening. As Alexa said, there wouldn't be any medicines if we hadn't had interactions and collaborations between clinicians, groups of stakeholders and industry. So I think it's fantastic that Together for Rare Disease is really putting this back on the agenda at this critical point.
Thank you very much. And Victoria, let me turn to you to share your perspective. We've been talking about the ERN industry collaboration. We've had ERNs talking. Talk to us from the industry perspective.
Absolutely, thank you. So, I don't know, maybe starting with the potential, because we have spoken a lot about the challenges. The potential is clear. The the willingness to work together is becoming clearer, I believe. And from the simple idea that the ERN were to the idea that, you know, the knowledge travels and so that the patient hasn't to, from that simple starting idea, we grew a lot from 2017. So in a way, I think that industry, we were looking at this very closely from the very beginning, and the Board of Member States statement was music to our ears, and we were really ready to see what we could do more together. And in a way, I'm not even sure to what extent the mistrust played a role. It's more maybe working at different speeds. But I mean, if we want to be hopeful, I think that the speed is like slowly but surely coming to a same pace. And I think that, you know, it is becoming clearer and clearer. Stelios started with the figure that we always refer to, this 95% of diseases without a treatment. And if you go and unpack that number, for sure you can see that of these diseases, many have a very low prevalence, and the problem is really with data, is really with registries. And so finding the right way to cooperate, to even understand where these needs are, understand this patient population is paramount. And so basically, I think in terms of barriers, they are still there. Some of them are quite practical because, you know, if you think about any European project, really, something that's arrived to this end from 2017 at this speed, it means that it's super exponential. So I think that we have to have the patience to cooperate together at the same speed. And the project that we are having here, Together for Rare Diseases, really try to look at a concrete approach. So, you know, because the ERN themselves, they are at different speed of development, right? So we want to really look at things where there is an opportunity for scalability, where there are some infrastructure which are already there. I do believe that beyond the idea of mistrust and whatnot is really to looking, because as Andre said, it's not the first time we talk about pilots. And from the industry perspective, there is, of course, a lot of willingness, but also a need for practical and clear objective, because we also have to go back and respond internally for that.
Thank you very much. So that's the first perspective from members of our panel. And now we're going to look at the 4 key policy asks. So the first one we're going to look at is the strategy for the ERNs. And as we heard, the ERNs were a sort of novel methodology put forward by the Commission 4 or 5 years ago, starting from that very simple idea that knowledge should travel, not the patient. Here we are a few years down the line, and the European Commission is in the process of reviewing the ERNs and exploring what they might be in the next iteration or phase. So, Andre, let me come to you. How would the review of the Commission play into these asks that we've got? What do you think might be the connection between the clear call here for broader and deeper collaboration and the way that the Commission is assessing the success of the ERNs?
Okay, I think it's good to maybe point out, a few important developments, because, as I think Victoria said, it was Victoria on my right side, Vicky, Victoria on my left side. Like Vic said, there were so many issues on the agenda that I think we can click, many boxes already. For example, we knew that the first thing, we wanted to start the panels for the patients and start to really get to the moment that patients can get advice, the clinicians around the country, about the individual case of patients with this famous CPMS platform, which is the platform which allowed this consultation model. We are improving this. We are trying to get better on this work. The work on guidelines. It was very, very difficult concept, still, to under development, but again, we learn a lot. We are moving ahead. The third point, which also we should not forget, it really was trigger research agenda because of the money we're able to generate, together, European Commission from the European Union level with the member states, and the research program was created when ERNs are quite successful already, in getting money and programs from this pocket of resources. So those things are already happening. I think we need to learn, how to get better. Now we are going to the evaluation of the system, because this is what is in the letter of law. We should not forget that ERNs are created as a legal. They are not legal entity, but they're created by the legal act of the Directive for Patient Rights for the Cross-Border Healthcare. This is not the typical kind of research infrastructure, but this is a real kind of body in the system, which one of the, I think, biggest achievement of this directive, which you can also see in our evaluation report, which was published in May a few months ago. And there are already structures. We need really to have a look on them. Registries, registries. We have them, and of course there are many issues around this. How to work better, how to enrich. What some of them already there, others still under development. So what's the lessons learned? We should not forget we also build infrastructure in the Commission through the GRC, allowing to kind of get the more, let's say, harmonized way of building up those registries. Simultaneously, we are pushing now the work on the partnership, public-private partnerships like IHI, on the clinical trial sites, also with member states, hopefully public partnership, and also member states just starting preparation for the very hopefully successful but now already big joint actions when there 26 of member states already agreed to go together to plan the work together on implementation of ERNs in national systems. Plus Ukraine is the first time we see Ukraine in joint action. So you may say, appetite is growing with the eating. So I think we are in this process. We would like more, but I think sometimes we have to carefully plan next steps.
Thank you very much, Andrei. Maybe Professor Alexis, I can bring you in on this. How you hope that the sort of review of the first phase of ERNs might move towards a new approach to innovation for the rare disease ecosystem?
Well, I think that the lessons we learned at the Prague meeting, and Jakub is here, so he can confirm, and I have it in front of me, the first two statements of the call to action for the ERNs is stronger integration of ERNs into national healthcare systems, to sustainable and proportionate investment from national and EU budgets into strengthening the capacity of the ERN centers. Because I agree that with ERNs, the patients don't travel and knowledge does, but we shouldn't forget the next phrase, which is that whatever happens in the world, the patients will still need to be clinically examined. Otherwise, we go towards the wall. We cannot do virtual medicine. Patients need to be examined. We can do investigations. We can discuss them in a medical team. So the medical teams that are behind the ERNs that need, because of the action grant now, to link with the smaller centers in each country, this is the future of the sustainable or whatever it is ecosystem. The patients are there because they are in their countries, they are near home, they know their doctors, and the bigger specialist teams already linked together. And this is a huge step. I didn't know nothing about rare bone diseases or eye diseases. Ellen is here today. Today, the medical teams, at least the leadership of the ERNs, know very well each other. What is still missing, because we are young, is how to better motivate the 20,000 doctors, members of the medical teams. Because for the moment, they don't understand very well what we are doing. We are somewhere in the middle, and they don't know how to contribute, particularly if at the country level, they are not supported as medical teams to see more patients. Because if the whole idea is to label a center and increase its waiting list of patients, this is not the service to the patients. It is just create more problems. So that's why I'm saying the infrastructure is there. We need to link it. And the registries, Andrei said it a minute ago, they are there and they have one powerful thing. They have valid data from expert centers. It's not enough having registries. It does need to be, a rare disease has a trajectory of 20, 30 years to be understood. to understand the mechanisms, to try the treatment. So that's why I agree. There's not such a big risk, unfortunately, to be flooded by new drugs from one day to another. We just need to understand what's going on first and then develop with the industry the next drugs.
Before I let you go, I mean, it was so interesting to hear that the rare disease trajectory is 20 to 30 years to just fully understand more about the disease. Do you think that the ERNs have the capacity to shorten that? Because I know that in rare diseases, one of the key challenges is to shorten the diagnostic journey. And you've talked before the diagnostic journeys of the medical understanding of a disease. Is that an area where we could expect to see results from ERNs?
I will use the same argument Dimitri used because we're both Greek. I don't know if the ERNs have the capacity, but I know that nobody else has it. I don't see how we can understand better the diseases if the few experts we are working on the diseases don't develop this link between them. I am confident they can do it. And they can do it because when you study one area of disease, or when you are looking at one treatment, indirectly, you also look at the treatment of the next disease. You also understand better the diagnosis of the previous one that you didn't very well understand the mechanism. And because we are talking to each other, it will go faster. It will take time, but it will go faster, no doubt.
Thank you very much. So again, it's that sort of networked knowledge building that would create a difference. So that brings me to the next of one of the big themes that we wanted to look at, which is legislative and non-legislative tools. Andrea, you mentioned that what was so extraordinary about the ERNs is they are written into a legal basis, which it's a sign of political commitment. It's a sign that member states have to deliver on them, that they have to be resourced in infrastructure. So this legal basis, I think, is quite important. And we want to see how that works with and supports non-legislative tools and opportunities. So let me turn to Vittoria first to tell us more about, what do you think are the other opportunities to support this more collaborative innovation centre?
Thank you. So I again want to be a little bit more positive when we say that Dimitris, we don't have the ecosystem. I know there are huge gaps in the ecosystem, but I truly believe that already thinking at policy development in terms of ecosystem is the way to go. So I referenced before the 95%, which again, it came very prominently in the review of the OMP legislation, because it's the right goal to look at the areas where we don't have treatment. Okay, but when, as Alexis rightly said, when we don't know enough about the natural history of the patient, when we don't even know exactly what the population of the ultra-rare diseases are, automatically this translates in a situation where there isn't yet a business case for developing a treatment. And it doesn't mean that we don't want to go in that area, but that we need different models to do so. So I see the interplay between the incentives that can be put in the regulation, the assessment and the streamlining of evidence that Jacob was also referring to through the HTA as part of the same system. And before that, the pre-legislative tool, the non-legislative tool come, and this kind of partnership, the mechanism that we can use through the public funding, but also possibly with the support of industry, are the complement to it. And it seems like intuitive. However, it has to be also reflected in the review of our policy tools, and that's where the opportunity lies, with the overarching structure of a plan for rare diseases, which is, of course, not a pharmaceutical plan. It's not a pharmaceutical strategy, right? It's centered around the patient, but it's clear that the ERN are left, right, and center.
Thank you. Vicky, can I bring you in to sort of see how this new collaborative safe space that we're being created could benefit from or be based on legal and non-legal tools?
Yeah, I'll say a bit about the non-legal. So in the policy asks, we specifically, targeted one of these towards the European Action Plan for Rare Disease, which Jan mentioned earlier, and which, of course, Frederic Ries is going to talk more about later. So, Eurodis have really been advocating tirelessly for a rare action plan since the end of the Rare 2030 Foresight study last year, which I was honoured to be a part of. And it's great to see, actually, that, the recommendations that came out of that project, which cover so many different topics for rare disease, that there's a real emphasis on actually implementing those, taking those forwards. And the action plan itself will deal with many, many topics. So the action plan will not be entirely around ERNs and industry collaboration or even around ERNs. But that, we hope, will be a crucial part of that action plan, because what the action plan will be all about is around enhancing that collaboration and that solidarity. And that was a key message from the Rare 2030 Foresight study. Not just collaboration between countries, but collaboration between the stakeholder groups. What I think will also be nice about that action plan is that it will have a real emphasis on supporting the long-term future of ERNs broadly, because, you know, it'll be no good if we really focus on how ERNs can advance in research and really be, you know, starting all these amazing collaborations with companies, if the kind of core ERN support is not there, if they don't have, you know, the key staff that they have to do their day-to-day mission. So all of those challenges have really been very significant, I think, not to speak for the coordinators, but I'm sure that that's been a challenge over the years. To build really grand, ambitious future plans, you need to have a stable setting, you need to have, you know, a strong financial basis for your core stuff. So I think that the action plan will help there too. And also it'll be nice to see something quantitative. So for me, if an action plan for rare disease can actually keep track of, you know, the numbers of public-private partnerships that are coming out and really see what's different, because we've had so much investment, so many projects in rare diseases for so long. And I think what's nice about this future action plan idea is that this will you know, really be quantitatively looking at what all of this has done. How do you really measure the impact of all of this? So I think it's a really good opportunity for the topic of this project.
Thank you very much. And now that's a really good bridge for us to now talk about this issue of data, because that's absolutely clear, making sure that the data delivers new knowledge, new innovation, etc. And on this issue, we've touched on registries, the importance of registries, and that some of our earlier speakers talked about that data can come from clinical trials. It also needs to encompass social situations, quality of life. It needs to come from families and their carers. But the importance of high-quality data being collected in a comparable and robust way is really at the heart of the way that industry and ERNs will collaborate in the future. And the report we're launching today, the policy asks, calls for this, and it says we need to have some principles to be developed and shared around the way that data is held, it's managed and used. So I want to now get some view from different members of the stakeholders to explore on that. I'm going to start with Dimitrios, because you mentioned, you know, that the key value that rare disease patients want data to be shared, they want the integration, and that the breakthroughs will only come if that data is used by clinicians together with the industry to make the breakthroughs. So this principle around how data is developed, how it's managed and used, what are the key things from your perspective?
Thank you. When we're talking about data, we might have different perspectives from different stakeholders. Because I notice also in many of our documents, you know, about the ownership of data, which I don't think it's so much the point for this discussion, although it's very clear. But what it is needed is the accessibility of the data. And although I appreciate that a lot of work has been done to build our registries in the ERNs, and yes, in a very short time, if we consider the European time, let's say, which is obviously something different, we need to have resources for this. Because I want, for example, from my condition to pass 10,000 patients or 5,000 patients inside the register of the ERN. We were lucky enough to have a hub in our ERN, which means that it's fair ready, that can connect to any database. But is this the case in the most of the ERNs? Or do we create another silo? And that's a rhetorical question. So I think the first item is not to create more silos than already existing. And I can tell you from Dusan, we have 70 registries that don't talk to each other. And yes, we're not an ultra-rare disease, but this makes us an ultra-rare disease. So that's the one item. The second item is the use of data. So yes, we can use it for clinical care. We can use it for research. but we need to use it in the stream of the stakeholders, down the stream and up the stream. So we need to use this for basic research, and we need to use it for regulatory purposes and SDA purposes. Because a lot of times the access is, a post-code access that you cannot pass the borders of the Czech Republic, even after 4 years, to have access. And the same happens with the data. You can't. We can take the lessons with the good lessons, let's say less good lessons from the GDPR, that I have my own interpretation of what is data sharing. No, there is one thing of data sharing. I have my own interpretation of open data. No, it is one interpretation of open data. Of publishing negative results. Yeah, it's also one interpretation. So if we want really to connect this ecosystem, as Vittoria said, and we need obviously a policy to connect it, then we need to make sure that we also create a network, as Jan said, a blueprint, where this data, how it's collected, where it's going, how it's shared, and how it gets back, and it adds value to the patient. Because I would love to give access to my data to Alex for research purposes, but self-volunteerism has its limitations. It has to have a value, because if there is a value for the patient, then the patient will contribute his data. The question is, what's there for me? And it remains a challenging question. So we have to have a blueprint that whatever data is getting inside the system, it provides value to the end user. And the end user is not everybody else, it's the patient, I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicky, let me bring you in on this, because we've had this very clear message from Dimitrios saying that we need absolute clarity. There needs to be a single interpretation of a lot of these principles, because otherwise the value of the data is not used. And we also need to remember that however the data passes through the system, value needs to return back to the patient as well. What's your perspective on some of these principles that are in the policy asks about data?
So I think, the ERN registries is a really key area potentially for ERN and industry engagement. It's not the only area, actually. I think that's the nice thing about the project, is that there are, other ways in which companies and networks can collaborate. But having said that, the registries are a huge opportunity. So if you think about properly resourced ERN registries spanning all of those different sites, and ideally more, because we've got to think, as Dimitrios said before, about how we get all the patients in. It really depends on what we want those registries to do. And, as always, the ERNs are in different starting points here. So some of the ERNs are newer to research, and they didn't have lots of research active networks before. They were maybe very focused on the care side or the guideline side, because all ERNs came from their own position of strength. So what we have at the moment is, a lot of the ERNs are just getting started with building their registries, and they will be extremely valuable, but core epidemiological surveillance type registries. Other ERNs are already developing registries where they're really collecting quite detailed disease-related data sets, which can actually do a lot more than count patients and support diagnostics. They actually almost are research ready. They can already do feasibility studies, assessments for clinical trials. They can do patient recruitment. And increasingly, the hopes are that they can provide serve real regulatory purposes, do post-marketing surveillance, actually function as real-world evidence. Now, for that to happen, we're going to need more than the current kind of funding that we have. So I think what's nice about this project, and what I'd like to see going into the future, is all of the ERNs and all the actors really having good discussions with the member states, with the patients, about what activities that are part of an ERN registry are really most suitable for whom. I think, a few people would say that the, companies should be kind of taking over the funding of the central infrastructure. There's a nice idea that actually the member states should more and more be supporting their ERN centres and actually, helping to provide funding for staff at sites to collect all of this fantastic data. Because as much as we're dreaming about automatically pulling data from electronic health records into registries, that's probably not going to be the reality for a long time. So I think I like the approach of trying to open these discussions up, really look at what the potential of the ERN registries are, and then look at what activities in there are actually most suitable for collaboration with the different actors. And industry is a really important part of that if we go into the regulatory space.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Victoria, let me invite you to come in on that. You know, we had a very nuanced and careful outline of, you know, the different parts of the data collection structure and where really it should be member states stepping up to invest and support that, but then where there's room for industry to contribute. What's your view?
So first of all, I think that there are robust recommendations on the verification of data, on the way to make them usable, robust, interoperable. And, you know, maybe it's obvious to everybody, but it's important to think that low-hanging fruit is not what we want here. So we have to have a system that is sustainable, because for any research, really, we need this robust data. We need to define on the standard, agree on them, so that we really speak the same language. So that's the starting point for sure. I think also building on what Vicky was saying, you know, we have different situation and different way in which industry could support, because we have different level of maturity of the ERN. So the idea of a common pot doesn't really fit here. We have some systems that are not federated and need support in that sense. We have some ERN where the disease-specific registry are scarce in terms of data. So there are really very different places where industry could help. We have also discussed, you know, because again, in this project, we try to take a really practical approach, is that are there opportunity for multi-industry collaboration to do post-approval collection of data, because that's quite tangible. One wish, I think, that was more than a wish, is that as we progress with science, as we progress with development, for sure, the registries should somehow take into account genomics research, making sure that we can more and more collect data of this kind, because otherwise we will be lagging behind in terms of the data we're collecting versus the approval of medicines of the future. And yes, so it is really this, starting with the verification, making sure to have different models for different situations where industry could ad hoc contribute, and keeping up with science and new way to investigate medicine, which has a lot to do with genomics and personalized medicine.
Thank you. That brings us now to the fourth theme, which is looking at this issue of governance. The policy ask that you'll find in the document that we're launching today calls for co-creation of transparent governance structures. And we need to try and understand a little bit about what this might look like. And I'm going to ask Professor Alexis to answer that. And then we'll also come to Andre to see how the EU could support this approach to transparent governance mechanisms. What would that look like?
Well, I mean, the term is excellent and it's useful and should be there. But again, I think that with the already existing legislations, infrastructure, etc. in Europe, this transparency is already secured. We need to open the doors, but to do this, we need to start becoming a bit more and more concrete on what we need. Otherwise, we leave out this global impression that when we will collect the data, everybody will have access to everything, everybody will know the name of my ex-stepmother and how at the day of my... This is not true. This is not what we are putting in the registries. This is not what we are putting on the data. I will give you a very simple example of a choice we made for one area of disease, because I agree with Victoria. It doesn't fit to everything, not only because of the degree of development of a registry, but also of the area of diseases. We represent a disease that is at the same time more than 300 rare diseases and a symptom, epileptic seizures, of many other diseases. So we made a choice at the beginning. We said, our registry at this stage will just collect where the patients are and what is the correct diagnosis. Tomorrow, I want to do, I don't know, for example, a natural history study of one of these diseases, or what Vicky was saying a minute ago. This, in fact, is almost a research project per se that comes and clips to the main registry, and then it enlarges it with time. And then there is another trial on drugs of a given rare disease, where again, it comes and clips to the main registry and it builds it up. So And when the moment comes, for example, for the post-marketing follow-up, I have the data, I have the 500 patients of this rare disease collected all over Europe, otherwise I would have 3, and I know how it proceeds. So the transparency is there, the rules are there. We just need to start now moving into concrete steps on how this is done. I mean, the first concrete step, talk to any doctor in the room, it's not that we don't have the electronic tools. It's that we have so many that we don't have the time when we do the outpatient clinic to put the patients in. And when we start discussing with this, they said, yes, but if the industry supports that, it's giving money to a medical department without knowing what will be the output. It's not the industry that says that, it's the government that says that. But at the same time, they do not provide the 3 research assistants that will put the data in. And then we keep discussing of an electronic file that miraculously one day will pour everything into a REDCap database. This will not happen. It will take 50 years. So what I miss in my department when I collect the data is the 3 younger fellows that, with my guidance and my help, will put the data in. Otherwise, I have a rebellion at the waiting room of patients waiting for 6 hours because I'm moving from one registry to the other and then to the electronic file and then I go back. This is not possible. So the transparency is there. We just need to organize it a bit differently.
Thank you. Andre, we just heard some of the real life challenges of dealing with the complexity of rare diseases and the silos that data are in. And we're now talking about moving to a governance structure that allows everyone to contribute and create some standardization. Where do you see the EU be providing some support to the next level of transparency and governance?
Oh, of course, at this stage, I think it's good to remind us that we have the governance of data on the table. This is European Health Data Space. It's already discussed in this House formally since a few weeks. And of course, Czech presidency quite progressed, already in the Council with discussions. So now we are hopefully next few months, there will be more clarity about this. And this, of course, you can see also a number of positions coming to the debate because, we are speaking about rare disease, but of course, the point of the European data space is to try to help the governance of all data, health data in Europe. So somehow, in one hand, we will be challenged by this big concept, which I think is important because I strongly believe, even these 50 years, Alexis is paralyzing me. But we have to see the future framework, and I hope this future framework will be still possible to agree under the current term of the Parliament and really shape the future. So this is the one element. I think simultaneously we should work on the existing data because Dimitrios, Alex, you mentioned that we should not forget we have also data from the past, and most of data are in paper. We see already in the practical term that many registries are facing this problem. Okay, I do have registries, but data are in the paper folders. So we need to find a way to bring them into the kind of digital life. European health data space, we should not also forget this about the digital health data. This is one of the first phrases of the regulation. So somehow let's go for the future, but I think we really have to go with the practical solutions which you already mentioned. So methodology, more standardization. There's also a lot of discussion. We don't discuss here about the quality of data, the orphanet codes, the way the data are not just gathered, but able to be exchangeable between different registries or different countries and so on. So huge work, is a really titanic job to do it. We have seen some registries, they are successful because somehow they found these 3 young or older assistants to push this agenda, but maybe because it was easier to collect. So somehow it's determination, but at the same time there's a lot of obstacles. So let's look for the angels. They will do the job for us.
If you allow Just one comment also.
Because you're Greeks. You know.
Not to forget that this is not only for rare diseases, the data health space, but we forget one detail, that before a symptom becoming a rare disease, it is already there and it needs to be diagnosed. So what we are developing is for all the patients, independently if they will have a rare disease diagnosed in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. They don't appear at the outpatient clinic saying, I have a rare disease. They appear with a symptom. And then, so if we had the infrastructure that these patients are recorded, registered, not only in the electronic file of my hospital, but at something more central, in a country within the EU, that's the political part of the discussion, then the data will be there. And the natural history will build up progressively.
Thank you. Demetrios, let me invite you to come in on this issue of governance.
Thank you. If I get paralyzed with the 50 years, at least we have a doctor also to revive us, because because I think 50 years is maybe too much. But I was thinking that when we're discussing about the systems and the health, European health data space, etc., we have to keep in mind that yes, the symptom will be there. It will be inside the system. But the systems we have built so far, and I can remind you from example, for the way that we assess drugs, the HTA, the quality, etc., they're not designed for rare diseases. The clinical trial models we have are not designed for rare diseases. So we have to make sure that what we design, it is fit for purpose for rare diseases. So we will not have this super fantastic, perfect double-blind, for rare disease that you have 5 patients in Europe, or 10 or 20. So we need to design tools in the data collection and the high-quality data collection that will accommodate this. The second item is about the tools that we need also for the unique identifiers. Because I can tell you that my son is in 5 registries, in 5 countries, in 5 healthcare systems. He's not 5. Yeah. So we have to solve this also, which we're getting there. Hopefully we're getting there. There's a lot of work done. Finally, on the governance part, we need to incorporate inside what we learned from our EuroNMD registry is we incorporated the honest broker, which is the patient. Because the only one who actually owns his data, but he's not, let's say, he doesn't present any bias, is the patient. So the moment we had 50%, 50-50 governance in our registry with the patients, then we have interest of the patient registries to connect with our registry. Because I know that you do an amazing job, Alex, but if it is all clinical data and there is no problem, of course, I'm not interested to be part of your registry. So the governance and an equal partnership, valuable partnership, and not check for the patient representation is an input. The second is that we have to be able to connect, so governance should be flexible enough to be able to connect with other data sets. And maybe also there is a part of how we can get this in the governance, the part of resources. Because yes, 20,000 clinicians. What's the value proposition of in the 10 minutes that he sees a very complicated rare disease patient? My son needs at least 6 specialties, 7 specialties. He can also incorporate this data. It's impossible. And especially if you are not in the center of the ERN that you are a believer. So these elements are items that we can incorporate in this project. There are magnificent pilots, or at least initiatives that we can use, initiatives that it is supported by the Commission, and it is that supported by patient organizations and clinicians. So I think we have to identify what are the items that worked fine and try to scale them up.
Thank you. And just for the last comment on this issue of governance, Vicky, let me invite you to share any reflections that you think are worth exploring on this issue of governance structures.
Well, I guess governance is a very broad term, but when I heard this question, I was thinking about practically how we can start to work together, because we know that the ERNs are not legal entities and that they won't be for a long time, if ever. So we have to think about what we can work with. We know that the hospitals which make up the ERNs are legal entities. So I think, we have to start teasing out, is it feasible? Is it really possible for a single centre within that ERN to take on that role, to be that kind of legal entity and to distribute resources and do contracting? Or do we need to think about using foundations or some other type of third party outside the ERN structure, like I don't know, a tech transfer office or something that would be able to do that role? But there's all the subtleties. Would one single sort of large organisation do that for all the ERNs? Would all ERNs have to kind of designate or create their own foundations? There's all these different things. So I think what's good is that we do have the legal entities there. The hospitals are legal entities. But actually, there's a real variety. If you go to your hospital and say to them, we want you to act as the legal entity to be in charge of all of the contracting, for our engagements with industry, that's quite a big ask, and it needs support and it needs tools to help work those things through. So I think that's what these pilots, I'm hoping, are going to be able to give us, to tease out what kind of models and governance structures are the most appropriate for the different types of activities, and to see, can we create some resources along the way without reinventing wheels? Jan mentioned the EURTC has been doing this for 50 years, so where we can, let's be recycling resources and codes of conduct and conflict of interest policies and everything else.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I'm now going to draw this panel to a close. It was a really useful exchange, and I hope we have added some flesh to the bones of the 4 principles that you'll find in the policy asks. Just as a reminder, the 4 elements that we touched on was the ERN strategy, what's happening in the next phase, where is it going to go, how could it develop further towards its potential. Then we talked to the second theme, looked at legislative and non-legislative tools. How does the huge benefit of having a legal basis then combine with some of these softer tools and mechanisms to deliver change? We touched on the issue of data. There's a huge amount of it sitting in silos, a lot of it on paper. How do we get it flowing appropriately? And then governance. We just heard some of the complexities and the challenges, getting the balance right between the benefits, how it's all come together, how it's contracted, who takes leadership, how you manage the sort of cross-border nature if the data's flowing across it, how one organisation could take legal responsibility for management of data across all of these different areas. So the conversation is clearly just at its beginning phase, but I want to say a warm thank you to the members of the panel for starting that conversation to us. So to Vittoria, to Andrei, to Professor Alexis, to Dimitrios and to Vicky, thank you very much. So the next element in our agenda is we now have a video message which is going to bring some perspectives from the European Parliament, particularly touching on pieces of legislation that are coming forward that also might affect the rare disease innovation ecosystem. So this is a video message from the Czech MEP Andrej Knotek, and he would like to speak to us. Let's watch his message.
Good afternoon to everybody. As an MEP supporter of Together for Rare Diseases, I would like to thank all speakers and attendees for the discussion today. It is a real pleasure to address you all. The aim of Together for Rare Diseases is to promote a rare disease ecosystem in Europe that puts collaboration at its center. Specifically, this multi-stakeholder initiative intends to highlight the potential of collaboration between the European reference networks and the pharmaceutical industry. I am therefore very happy that today we launch 4 policy asks to put this topic on the EU agenda and take the first steps towards achieving this vision. Thanks to the interest of the Czech Presidency and the fight of several MEPs, and the revision of some crucial pieces of European health legislation, the rare disease area has never been more in the spotlight and has the attention of EU policymakers. Finally, we want to use that momentum to improve the lives of the Europeans living with some of the most rare and complex diseases. Indeed, the launch of Together for Rare Diseases policy asks comes at a crucial moment as the European institutions carry out important legislative revisions in the implementation of the EU's pharmaceutical strategy. This is a golden opportunity to adapt rare disease research and development to better serve our patients. For example, the new European health data space must introduce EU-level standards on health data collection and promote interoperability across national borders, enabling European reference networks and the industry to collaborate in a transparent way. Allowing for secondary use of data is also important for building and growing patient registries, which is particularly relevant for rare disease due to small patient populations. At the same time, there are many non-legislative actions that we can take to enable the collaboration between European reference networks and the industry. The policy asks highlight the need for public funding for registries and support for increased cross-discipline engagement between all reference networks and the industry in preclinical setting. As an MEP, I will work to raise awareness of the potential of ERNs and industry collaboration to deliver solutions to the unmet need we see in rare diseases and put this on the top of the EU health agenda. A true European health union must include all citizens and care for all diseases, no matter how rare. Thank you very much, and I wish you have a fruitful discussions. Many thanks.
Thank you very much to the message from MEP Knotek, and also clearly setting out his personal commitment and ambition to use his role in the European Parliament to advance this further. Now we're going to explore some of the future ambitions of the Together for Rare Diseases initiative, which is, as I said at the beginning, this is our first opportunity for an in-person meeting after the collaborations happened behind the scenes over the last 2 years. So joining me to explore where this could go, I'm delighted to welcome Professor Hélène Dolphus from the ERN-I Coordinator. You're also the co-chair of the ERN Coordinators Group and a member of the steering group for the Together for Rare Diseases. Welcome, Hélène. And also joining me is Sheila Upadhyaya, the rare disease expert and formerly an associate director of the highly specialised technology programme at the UK's National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, also known as NICE. And you are the chair of the Together for Rare Diseases steering group. So you have been working for the last few years and have got a clear idea of where the ambition of where this could go forward. Let me start by turning to you, Sheila. We've heard from the panel and the MEP Knotek, who just spoke to us about some of the challenges, the difficulties, the things that need to be worked out to allow the full potential of industry-ERN collaboration to move forward. How do you think the Together for Rare Diseases initiative could make progress on this?
Thanks very much, Tamsin, for that question. I think, first of all, to say the Together for Rare Disease initiative is a multi-stakeholder initiative, and it puts patients at the heart of its objectives, recognising that 95% of unmet need. But actually, we've been really, really well supported by our industry partners, as well as the ERNs and the other stakeholders in this space. So it's different for me because all of those people are along this journey together, wanting to achieve the right things for the right reasons and for the patients, with patients helping us decide and direct and give us some clarity about what we're expecting. So I think that provides a really good opportunity. So everybody, I think somebody mentioned in the panel earlier, we're operating in silos before, trying to do the right things for the right reasons. But actually this initiative is opening up those gates and building those collaborations and building that expertise and knowledge sharing so that actually we can move that dial for those patients.
Thank you. And several panellists mentioned this idea of pilot projects, which you're going to run next year as proof of concept for making ERN industry collaboration happen. And that's obviously an opportunity to try and explore where some of the conflicts are, where some of the challenges are, and the way forward. Professor Hélène, what do you hope you could achieve through these pilot projects?
Thank you very much. Yeah, the pilot projects for us would be very important because, as we say in French, on apprend en marchant. We learn to walk while walking. And for the ERNs, it has been 5 years. It has been quite short, actually, because we have had a lot on our plates. I would just like to remind you also that we are all very different, quite heterogeneous. We cover a lot of different areas of diseases and also of research and partnership with industry. I mean, it's not only drugs, of course, innovations at this level like gene therapy and also genomics, but it can also be medical devices, protheses, etc. So everything, it's really extremely broad. And I think the pilots are going to be really important because, as you said, at the time being, we are already working with industry, each of us. We are ERNs, we are, in fact, our legal entity is the hospital. And we are already, each of us, already interacting with clinical trials. But what we want here is, with the image of ERNs, is to really upscale this at the level of Europe, and using really all the tools now we are acquiring with the ERN. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity really to really put in music. What we want to do now is to develop this concretely, the partnership with industry. And I think Vicky really touched the point just previously. How are we going to do that in practice, in action? And we should start today, actually, to do this. And there we really have to have a brainstorming with all the stakeholders and also to be extremely, and this includes, of course, the Board of Member States, the European Commission, industry, the hospital managers. I think these are very important too, and all the colleagues and the patients, of course, first of all. But we have to see exactly how we can liaise all this together with a governance that is feasible and acceptable. And there is another point that is very important too here, and it was mentioned by the others, is at the level of the member states, there is a huge heterogeneity in the different healthcare systems. And the ERNs at the time, we are experiencing a lot of challenges in implementing, for instance, registries. So if we want to have a robust partnership with industry, we also have to be aware that we have to implement this Europe-wise. So this will need also a lot of work to be sure that we can really manage to do this in a very flexible and transparent way and rapid way, because somebody also mentioned that the speed can be quite different accordingly to the different actions and also accordingly to the different ERNs. Some ERNs were very advanced, for instance, on registries, others were advanced in guidelines, etc. So yes, we have to take the time and to try to harmonize and take this into account at the best also. So I think the example also of a multi-industry partnership in a consortium, this is also something that can be extremely useful. Alexis was mentioning the problem of collecting data. So this may seem really trivial for all of you. We are speaking of huge registries with thousands of patients and a big example worldwide. But in the daily life, in the hospital, you have to enter the data. You have to collect the data. And if you do not have any help for this, you will never have a registry. So, for instance, the partnership with industry can really be a very win-win situation where we work together in providing, for instance, epidemiological data to planify for trials, where are the patients, how many, the business plan, etc. But at the same time, industry can help us to populate our registries. if we do not have enough resources to do so, and this is the case at the time being. So this is just an example. So indeed, I think what we want as ERNs is action as soon as possible, and concrete action. And this means also help also in the governance and how we're going to build this together. So I hope the pilots will be chosen in the way where we can really see all the different situations. Because, again, we are all heterogeneous. We are not at the same stage, and we do not cover the same needs and the same diseases. So, yes, we are for the pilots.
I suppose the other thing just would be helpful to add from our perspective is what we want to learn from these pilots is exactly as Hélène said, those different situations, which frameworks apply, which proposals, which approaches fit best in different situations. So multiple industry collaborations, one-on-one collaborations. How can we change the narrative that is currently going on in the Board of Member States and help them understand that these collaborations, as Alexis says, already happen? And there shouldn't be a barrier, but how can we build appropriate governance, provide the tools and mechanisms and the structures in a way that enables these collaborations to work? Because without them, those patients are still going to have that unmet need. The jigsaw puzzle in Europe will continue to be fragmented, and we actually need to build a better picture.
Thank you. So I hear the ambition of the vision there that's coming forward, and I'm getting a sense of urgency and momentum. And you mentioned, Hélène, at the beginning that you were sort of, it's been 5 years for the ERNs, but that's actually very short, and you've been learning to walk as you've been walking. But I can see a direction of travel. There's a very clear vision about what you want to achieve. Maybe you can give us a sense of what are the next milestones and achievements that you want to get to in the next 12 to 24 months?
Thank you. This is, as you know, first of all, I think all the ERNs are really very busy in a lot of evaluation and monitoring tasks, as you know. So in the next 12 and 24 months, I think what we want to do is, first of all, to fill in our missions, and we have a lot on our plate. So this is also a very important point because we need time to do this. And what I would imagine is, for instance, for the ERNs, for instance, who are implementing the registries, some of them are really starting most of us actually, only 5 are very advanced, but it's really the time now to think how we can set up our governance with all the stakeholders, the patients, of course, first of all, the colleagues, industry, and the Board of Member States and Europe, the Commission. How can we write up our governance? How can we organize ourselves to make it possible to have the partnership? Because this is an example, for instance, for the registries, but you could find other examples, for instance, for clinical trials, and how we can work with industry also to see how we can improve our clinical trials. There is a lot of work on quality of life, outcome measures. For instance, our ERN is working with the EMA because there have been some questions on this. So there are a lot of places where already today and in the next 12 months we can work extremely actively.
Thank you. Let me ask you as well, Julia, to say what's on your not to-do list but to achieve list for the next 12 to 24 months.
I think achieve is a great kind of adjective, isn't it? I think we would love to be able to select a number of pilots that we can roll out across a number of ERNs, and I'm really enthusiastic about the proposals that we've received from both from industry and from some of our ERN networks. So we'd love to be able to do that. We'd love to be able to run another event like this next year and tell you how it's all gone and some of the frameworks that we've built. And we would really love to have continued conversations with the Commission and the Board of Member States about how do we explore and change this narrative, because as I think the earlier panel member said, the point is now.
So I want to say a warm thank you to both Hélène and to Sheila for sharing your ambition and your vision, and we see the momentum and the interest, and so thank you for sharing the ideas with us. Thank you both. And now I'm delighted to invite up to join me here on the panel a champion of rare diseases in the European Parliament. That's Frédéric Ries, a Belgian MEP who, from the Renew Group, who has for many years been calling for the need for an action plan for rare diseases and has championed patient-centric care in a number of different ways, both at national and European level. Somebody who understands how to get the levers of Europe moving to deliver positive benefits at national level. So, Frédéric, welcome, and let me invite you to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Tasmin. I took my glasses in case I do need them today. It's such a pleasure to be again with you, with all of you this afternoon. I recognize almost everybody here, all the usual suspects, may I say so? You stop me if I shock you. Is Jan there? Oh, Jan, vous êtes là. Do I need to say I don't know, messenger, whistleblower, special envoy for rare diseases, tireless, 1, 2. Mr. Dvoracek, my absolute favorite Czech minister. But he knows, and I applaud too his consistent and his courage and his attachment to the issue. You, of course, Tasmin, we've been there online, in the real life for so many years together. Listening to all your discussions this afternoon, I must say, it truly humbles me, because I must say, as you've mentioned, we've been on rare diseases for so many years now here, trying to be present and tireless and pushing to have it on the agenda. And it's humbling to see how far we have come. I know it's not enough, it's never going to be enough, but we've come from that far. How much we have been able to achieve over the last 2 decades, I would say, I think, here at the European level, including the launch, it has been said and said again, 5 years ago now, you've just said so, of the European reference networks. And this has been possible, as I said, through the tireless efforts of of basically everybody in this room. It's also very humbling to see, to look at the challenges patients and their close ones still, of course, face today. And I'm, of course, going to echo the first words pronounced in this room by Stelios. He did recall, and I did so again this week in the Health Committee, because all of you know that we are now discussing the very immediate, I hope, launch of the recast of the orphan drugs regulation. It was discussed in committee this week, and so I also recalled the figures and the numbers, which are not satisfying. 95%, Stelios said, I said, of rare diseases that remain today without treatment, and 1 in 5 patients, even if the treatment exists, who do not in their own member state have access to that treatment. And Mr. Dvoracek said and explained and lengthily exposed the flagrant, blatant inequalities in situation between the member states. So today is a call, of course, for the European Union to continue to take leadership in that crucial fight. For years now, all stakeholders have been asking the EU, have been asking us to revamp our ambitions in the field. Many of the national plans adopted following the 2009 Council recommendations have by now expired or are factually out of date. So we do need, what we need now is a new impetus. In a special 2019 report, the European Court of Auditors itself called for the Commission to reassess Europe's rare disease strategy by 2023. And 2023, if I do my calculation, is going to be in 2 months. So all stakeholders, I mean clinicians, well, again, everybody here, clinicians, healthcare providers, academics, European reference networks, coordinators, the industry, and most importantly, the patients and their close one, as I said, all have come together for in calling for Europe's action plan, the famous action plan on rare diseases in the Rare 2030 Foresight study. So our message, we've talked about the 4 pillars that are in everybody's brochure. The message stays clear. We need an ambitious and renewed framework to unify our policies and to improve the quality of life, lifelong life of the patients. We need a collaborative and consistent approach along the entire care pathway, from research to access, from diagnosis to care, to treatment, hopefully. This call echoes that of the Parliament from October last year and of the French and current Czech presidency of the Council. Lawmakers are coming together to make that a priority, and the time is now. That was one of the first questions also in the first panel. Yes. Why now? Well, because it is really the stars, les étoiles sont en bon ordre. In the policy ask launched today, Together for Rare Diseases calls, well, meaning we call for a plan that supports a collaborative ecosystem, including public-private partnership. Now, through the concrete case of cooperation between the reference networks and the industry, our panelists this afternoon have demonstrated all the benefits that patients could draw from more structured or even structured dialogues, generalization of real-world evidence, and the incorporation of private funding. Again, the issue of funding, which is crucial to support all progress. This is only one example of how a more ambitious, more coherent, more cohesive European approach could help patients. As much as I was when I initiated, you mentioned it, you were kind enough to mention it, the Rare 2030 project study in the Parliament. This was also a few years ago. I remain very committed to this idea. I will be taking these recommendations forward and continue, obviously, to urge the Commission to prepare a strategic European action plan on rare diseases, also one of the pillars today. Until then, we will push and continue this discussion in the Parliament together with all the champions of the Parliament, because we're getting, I mean, there's more and more people on board. You've met 1, 2, 3, I think, today, but there's many more. The policy asks developed together will serve as a reference, and the upcoming months will provide ample opportunities to infuse them into our work, including, as I've just mentioned, the revision of the pharmaceutical legislation, which is also the big pharma legislation, is coming also for a review. Hopefully, it has been delayed, so I'm not sure about this, but the Commission promises it's going to be early 2023 also, and including, as I said, as I mentioned, the orphan drugs regulation. Europe, it is a conclusion. I know. Are we? Yes, we are. It's going to be. Europe is about unity. Europe is about solidarity. This is our motto, l'unité dans les différences. It is about being stronger together where it matters. And gosh, how we matter together. In this sense, the rare disease community epitomizes Europe, I think. And Europe would not be Europe without you. So thank you all for your participation today. It has been an honor, it has been a pleasure, and now I yield back the floor to you, Tasmin.
Thank you, Frederick. As you say, you know, there has been such extraordinary progress over the last decade in moving forward, and now we see the momentum building, and that's why it's so wonderful that the Together for Rare Diseases initiative has come together precisely to do that, to develop that momentum, a bit like a snowball effect, where we've got the ERNs that have delivered, we've got patients coming forward, there's legislative opportunities and champions in the institutions. So we hope that you've been inspired today. We hope you will download the document and read through the policy asks. For the rest of this year and next year, there will be a number of events and other initiatives where we call on your support and your collaboration. There'll be opportunities for you to help take these policy asks, put them hopefully on the desks of those who can take them forward, and make sure that as plans happen and preparations happen for the next mandate at EU level, which will be post-2024, rare diseases come forward as being a central element of what makes European solidarity and diversity so important. So thank you all for participating, to Frederick Ries and the other members of the panels who've so generously shared their expertise. Please keep following our conversation on Twitter and LinkedIn on the Together for Rare Diseases using the hashtag. Thank you all. And for those of you who joined us online, I release you to whatever else you're going to do. For those of you who are here, we're going to reward your participation with some coffee and then a chance to network. So thank you all and see you again soon.